Have you ever wondered how Darwin, Einstein, or Schrödinger developed their groundbreaking theories? The secret wasn't just genius, it was conversation. In today's episode, we're going to talk about a revolutionary new way to develop scientific theories by partnering with AI systems as thinking companions. Stick around until the end, where I'm going to go into how this approach is already creating breakthroughs in Alzheimer's research and quantum physics. I'm Evan Goldstein. I'm a licensed professional engineer and a data scientist. I'm building AI capitalists to talk to the leaders and the thinkers, like you, about navigating this brave new world of thinking machines. So, when I was in high school, I had an amazing experience as a cadet sailor on the tall ship Californian. For 2 unforgettable weeks, I climbed high up in the rigging and was living the life of an 18th century sailor. What struck me most wasn't just the physical challenge, it was how the ship operated almost like a thinking system. Every sailor had specialized knowledge that had to be integrated through constant conversation. Even in the middle of the night, we'd wake up to adjust the rigging, calling out to each other, building a shared understanding of wind and waves and sail positions. Now, years down the line, moving from mechanical engineering to data science, I've noticed that we've lost a crucial piece in modern science. The old school teamwork vibe. It's like everyone's just stuck in their own bubble. Experts are unable to chat across different fields. This got me thinking, what if we could bring back that teamwork spirit by using AI as our brainstorming partner? Traditional science has a bit of a blind spot when it comes to tackling the big, messy questions, especially in fields like theoretical biology. We're talking about things that are tough to pin down, like how life starts, how it continues, or even what makes sense. For ages, scientists have leaned on analogies and mental models to try to wrap their heads around these crazy complex aspects of living systems. The catch is that without a strong way to connect these intelligent ideas to things that we can test, theoretical biology has kind of been sitting on the sidelines of mainstream science. But that's all starting to shift thanks to large language models. Those AI systems that don't just churn through information, but they can actually hold a solid conversation. Back when I was studying mechanical engineering, I was working on the mind-bending idea of film boiling. It's when water on a hot surface boils so fast that it creates a layer of steam. Sounds simple, right? But try to model it mathematically, and that was a real brain buster. We had data and we ran simulations, but the real understanding came from talking to other researchers, swapping ideas and sketching out theories and inventing new experiments together. This whole experience taught me that truly getting science doesn't just spring from equations or tests. It grows out of conversation. And large language models are totally shaking things up for theoretical biology. They don't just crunch numbers, they chat, and they weave together coherent thoughts. They work like thinking partners who remember and reason, which makes them perfect for those long, deep dives into science. So you might notice how theoretical biology and hands-on science are kind of like awkward dance partners. The molecular biology has been zooming ahead with its reductionist approach and high-tech imaging, but the theoretical side is just sort of dragging its feet. It's not that we're short on smart people or big ideas, it's more that some tools that we have just aren't cutting it for what we're dealing with. Living systems are wild. They're loaded with history, information, and they're just open-ended thermodynamic nightmares. You can't just slap a neat equation or a philosophy on them and call it a day. These systems play by rules that are way beyond simple physics, and they draw from memory and context with properties that just seem to emerge out of nowhere. The usual modeling tricks with their equations often miss the mark. Not that they're way off base, it's just that they don't cover all the bases. Now, I see this in my own job as a reliability engineer. Yes, we have math models for predicting when machines might break down, and we can kind of project these things. And they work great for simple things. But when you throw in all the tangled connections, things get messy. A pump doesn't just flake out because it's old. It might be the water chemistry, vibrations from nearby machines, or the gear's service record. You have to see the pattern. There are 3 major hurdles within theoretical biology that are holding it back right now. First, there's overdoing the numbers issue. In trying to be precise, it uses physics and engineering methods meant for neat linear systems. But biology, life, it's just not a circuit board. When everything's turned to numbers, you get models that look good on paper, but they don't stand up in real life. Now, second, biology's toolkit for talking about structures and causes is all over the place. Physics has very clear concepts like symmetry, but biology is working with vague terms like function or adaptation, without a consistent language to use, from tiny molecules to big brains. So a lot of things slip through the cracks or get twisted out of shape because we don't have these larger conceptual frameworks. And finally, there's a lack of supporting imagination. Some of the biggest eureka moments in biology came from just thinking differently, like Darwin dreaming up natural selection, or Schrodinger with his molecular code ideas. Nowadays, if you can't back it up with data or computer models, intuition-driven ideas get ignored. The mental magic that goes into creating a model usually stays locked away in a theorist's head, with no room for bouncing ideas around or refining them. So a new way to think about AI is as a conversation partner. Most people see large language models as just very fancy autocomplete tools. They're handy, but they're nothing groundbreaking. Some people worry they might squash originality or spread false information. But if you dive deep into working with them, they open up a whole new mental playground. We're not talking super intelligent AIs, but they do make awesome thinking buddies. Imagine them as systems that have cracked our language and logic, and they're ready to expand, challenge, and build on our ideas without needing everything to be all buttoned up and final. It's not about handing over our thinking, it's about reflecting, shaping, and honing ideas. We could think of like an LLM as a very smart, real-time conversation partner with a memory that science really needs. When I was living in Beersheba in the Holy Land and I was getting into desalination technology, I was hit with a major language barrier. All of my graduate classes were in Hebrew, and honestly, it felt like someone was speaking a totally foreign language. It was like I would just sit down in the class, and it was like someone was talking Chinese to me. Now this feeling, and I don't speak Chinese. Now this feeling of having ideas, but of missing the words to fully flesh them out, is a struggle that a lot of theoretical biologists face as well. They have insights, but they miss that conversation space to really grow those ideas into solid theories. By using large language models, every day I've found a way to put my thoughts into a stable and easy to find manner. I might throw out a metaphor or some complex idea, and the model can then run with it. I can bring up a question, and it's going to untangle contradictions or throw new perspectives my way. After countless chats, a method took shape that I call thought partnership. This isn't technology in the usual sense. There's no coding, there's no simulation engines, no statistical programs. But it's about building models, making sense of thermodynamics, shapes, and systems through the language of what's possible and how things are structured. So language becomes like the tool. We can swap ideas, framing them and growing them through conversation. Ideas keep getting better and better as they're re-examined daily, and they're challenged with fresh views that are linked across different fields. And because everything's reversible, we can circle back to previous thoughts, both the model and I can turn rough ideas into solid concepts. What you get isn't a fixed theory, but a mental roadmap, an evolving space where elements like entropy, structure, and adaptability can connect. And at the heart of it lies a shared grammatical pattern, things like thermodynamic shifts, shared information, phase changes, buffering, and crucial states. This isn't about simulating, it's about crafting theories and about building new ways of understanding. And it works because the machine remembers just the right amount, and it bends flexibly enough to be part of the thinking journey. And if you're getting value from this video, I would appreciate it if you would push the like button. Pressing like lets me know that I'm making content you want to see, and it helps spread that content to others. So thanks for helping break AI capitalist out of small channel hell. So building theories through conversation is right at the core of thought partnership. It's not just highbrow theory, but it's getting hands-on with ideas. It's about having back and forth conversations where thoughts get built up, tweaked, and spiffed up on the fly with a little help from an LLM friend. Over time, these talks don't just churn out novel concepts, they give rise to whole new frameworks. So at one point during my graduate studies, I was running through developing a credit scoring model where we would take data about people's credit behaviors, and then we would start coming up with ways of measuring those and using what we had to predict defaults, credit defaults. So what do we do? Once I'd finished the model, and it was a simple set of instructions, it was calculate this, calculate that, etc. So I just started playing with a language model. I started asking it, can you think of any other data features, which is like combinations of data, that we could look at in order to better predict this? And it started giving me ideas. And we just sort of iterated on that back and forth, and I started being able to predict things much better than anything that the professors had written up in our assignment. Now, over time, these conversations, like the one I had with the language model, don't just invent cool concepts, they give rise to new frameworks like cutting-edge equations, brand new models, and new tools for digging into science. One of the discoveries that was made was the redox reversibility ratio, which is a fresh new idea on how to spot cognitive fragility in brain diseases. It checks how the redox-sensitive cysteine bonds can flip back and forth. My own line of work is a reliability engineer, and that's someone who maintains and operates heavy equipment in big facilities. I see how things don't just tumble all at once. They don't fall apart all at once. They kind of lose their knack for bouncing back. They lose their resilience. If you look at a chiller plant, which is these huge pieces of equipment that generate cold water that circulates around campus and helps keep the campus cool through the air conditioning systems, it doesn't just die. It sort of gradually loses its ability to return to baseline conditions. It loses this reversibility, and when bits and pieces can't roll with the punches, the whole thing is in danger of sort of failure through a domino effect. So right now I'm kind of working on this idea of a collapse arrest fields, which is areas that can soak up shocks and stop a whole system from crashing. It flips the edge of chaos script, and it says that what's crucial isn't the chaos at the center of a system, but the give and take at the edges of a system that keeps systems ticking smoothly. So this is leading to some theories I'm developing on why large plants don't fail. So I've noticed in my work in tinkering with maintenance and functioning strategies, the systems that hang tough the longest aren't the ones with a ton of spare parts, but the ones with the most flexible bridges between them, the best communication between pump and chiller and air conditioning unit. So how well systems can communicate with each other counts way more than the guts that they're made of. What emerges from thought partnership isn't just a fancy new method of developing new theories and approaches. It's really a fundamental shift in how we approach inquiry. It transforms the basic goals and processes of theory building. Traditional science focuses on proof, findings that are valid if they can be rigorously demonstrated and replicated in the physical world. But a lot of valuable insights in biology and in cognition and physics and engineering, they emerge before they can actually be proven. It comes from metaphors, analogy, and intuition and structured speculation. Now, this is where large language models excel, not in the final answers, but in how those answers are constructed. They're not about mathematical proof. They're about creating coherence, creating frameworks, and creating plausible possibilities that we can then just kind of push further. They kind of revive a tradition of science that was practiced by Darwin and Goethe and Turing, where theory started as conversations over a beer, not calculations. The issue is that real knowledge doesn't just exist in isolated minds or formal publications. It emerges from sustained social interaction. Now, my own spiritual community, so I'll give you an example. Like, I don't drive on the Sabbath, right? Neither do my neighbors, which means that we all have to live within walking distance of each other. And because of that, it basically forces us to live together. So the same people I see at religious gatherings are the same people that my kids go to school with, and then become the same people we play Little League with. And it forms a sort of small village, and it preserves the ancient model of dialogue-based knowledge construction, which used to be central to scientific progress, but it's been lost in academia, and it seems to only exist in the religious world today. But in thought partnership, equations come at the end of a conversation, not at the beginning. So the development of the sort of finalized idea and then applying mathematical principles to it. But the dialogue itself is the actual model. Through iteration and reconsideration, large language models can help us separate what's structurally necessary from what's contextually dependent. And it exposes our own hidden assumptions and it can help us find new patterns. So within this sort of way of being, persuasion is a validation mechanism. If an idea or theory or a model feels inevitable, it's because its structure has withstood a lot of competition and different reasoning approaches from the other people you're interacting with, or large language model in this case. Language isn't just the background noise, it's the medium. When formal logic is too restrictive and simulations are too reductive, words preserve the essence of structure, but they handle the ambiguity without losing focus. Even poetic or metaphorical terms like collapse arrest or edge-critical coherence can evolve into principled concepts and equations in the end. So, is this real science? Challenging the usual ways of knowing is going to ruffle some feathers, and thought partnership with a large language model isn't any different. People worry about things like AI hallucinating or lacking originality, or they question AI's role. While these concerns aren't crazy, they miss the point of how this approach works. Some people might wonder, isn't the AI just making things up? Well, that's sort of what we do when we brainstorm, isn't it? Every idea starts as a hallucination. The key is whether these ideas can be developed and strengthened over time. And now in this setup, the large language model isn't deciding what's true. It's more like an idea generator. It comes up with things a person might not think of alone. The human is still the one in charge, and those so-called hallucinations are refined over time to ensure that they hold up. If an idea sticks around without falling apart, starting as a hallucination is actually a plus. What is the difference between a hallucination and an idea? Then there are people who say that the AI isn't original. It's just remixing ideas that are already out there. And that kind of misses what creativity is all about. A lot of the time, being creative just means putting old ideas together in new ways. What's important isn't whether someone has thought of it before, but how it's put together and pushed into uncharted territory. The novelty comes from the give and take of the process and the way that ideas are refined, and then the fresh ideas and concepts that come out of it. The AI might give us some comparisons or sources, but the human decides what's useful and how to use it. This isn't co-writing, it's co-creating. The AI's job is to help build the framework, not claim that it's making new discoveries. If thought partnership shows us anything, it's that there's room for a fresh kind of science. A place where ideas come before data, and chatting things out, talking it out, comes before formal rules and creating new equations. We don't really have a spot like this in today's science world. There's no place for this. But we could make room. You could imagine sort of like an institute of large language model science, where biologists and physicists and engineers and cognitive scientists and philosophers can all get together, and they can use AI and good conversation to think of new ways of thinking about life and of the mind. This place wouldn't be about ditching labs or math, but more about boosting the brain power they need and taking that approach before applying mathematical principles. It could welcome people who think outside the regular academic box, like doctors or philosophers or engineers or even artsy type deep thinkers. So if you remember back to the tall ship I sailed on when I was a teenager, on our last night out at sea, we got hit by this sudden storm, and the wind went crazy and it was trying to shove us right into the jagged shoreline. So in that nail-biting moment, it wasn't about being an expert on your own. It was all about teamwork. Everyone called out what they saw, and we mixed our thoughts together and we shifted gears fast. Now, after this, the ship's captain told me something that stuck with me. The ship isn't just wooden canvas, it's like a thinking system. Nowadays, as I juggle complex systems as a reliability engineer and I dive into data science to predict when things are going to break, I realize that the best prediction tools aren't just about math, they're about conversation. They blend insights from different fields and create strong frameworks that can roll with the punches. Now, machines are offering us not a replacement for human creativity, but a way to boost it. It's like adding cognitive training wheels to help us tackle through problems. The same way that ship managed to steer through the seas by using everyone's intelligence, we're starting to crack the mysteries of engineering and science and physics by staying in constant contact with our AI friends.